And find what page this is on?
227.
227?
Somebody got me.
Are you getting this too, Eliza?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'm getting there.
All right. My turn. This is a couple of examples of what neurons can do, how they can communicate with one another. Here we have two different neurons sending signals to the same third neuron. And here we have a single neuron breaking up a single signal and sending it to two other neurons. These are different ways that impulses can be moved around the nervous system. We call this impulse processing. You can have a single neuron that has 300 other neurons attached to it. And it gets even more complicated in that some of the signals that are sent are excitatory, meaning that they will cause the next neuron to send a signal. Whereas some of the signals sent are inhibitory, meaning they cause the next neuron to not send a signal. So if you're a neuron, you got a bunch of signals coming in saying send one, and a bunch of signals coming in saying don't send one. Which one do you do? Well, the signals kind of build on one another. So if you have more coming in that say send a signal than you do having saying don't send a signal, you might end up sending a signal.
What were the two words you used just then? It was inhibitory.
Excitatory is sending a signal. Inhibitory is not sending a signal. So this is a little video talking about that. It's got a guy in a boring voice, but it's good information. So try and pay attention.
Nerve cells, or neurons, are the basic units of the nervous system. Neurons serve as communication lines between other cells. Their long processes conduct electrical signals that can be passed from cell to cell. Neurons vary in shape and size, but they generally have three main regions with different functions. First, dendrites receive signals from other neurons and conduct signals toward the cell body. Second, the cell body integrates the incoming nerve signals. And third, the axon conducts electrical signals away from the cell body to other cells. Axons are frequently surrounded by a myelin sheath that helps signals travel very rapidly, sometimes reaching speeds of more than 100 meters per second. The long axon ends in several short branches tipped with enlargements called axon terminals. The junction where the axon terminal from one cell meets another cell is called the synapse. In almost all synapses, transmission of signals is in one direction only, from the axon of the first, or presynaptic cell, to the second, or postsynaptic cell. At the synapse, a chemical substance called a neurotransmitter is secreted from the end of the axon terminal. The neurotransmitter carries the signal from the presynaptic cell to the postsynaptic cell. Axons from several neurons can make contact with one postsynaptic cell. These synapses can be either excitatory or inhibitory. The postsynaptic cell integrates incoming signals from several cells in the following way. Often, signals from many neurons are required before the postsynaptic cell can relay a signal. Receiving a signal from an excitatory neuron causes the postsynaptic cell to more easily relay the signal down its axon. The effect is additive. The more excitatory signals a postsynaptic cell receives, the more readily it sends the relayed signal or signals down its axon. Receiving a signal from an inhibitory neuron hyperpolarizes the postsynaptic cell membrane, causing it to resist transmission of a signal down its axon. We have indicated this change in membrane permeability as a glow surrounding the cell body. The inhibitory effect is also additive. The more inhibitory signals a postsynaptic cell receives, the less able it is to send signals. Excitatory and inhibitory signals counteract one another. A larger number of inhibitory signals will block the transmission of a few excitatory signals. In addition, an inhibitory synapse close to the axon can block the effects of signals from excitatory synapses farther away. Similarly, an excitatory synapse close to the axon can override an inhibitory synapse farther away.
Yeah, kind of boring the way he said it, but it's good information. It shows that it's very complicated how these neurons work and communicate. And like they said in the reading, in actuality, the relative size of these things, the cell body is like the size of a tennis ball, and the dendrites are like the size of a large bedroom. To imagine the size of these things. So you can have a lot of surface area, a lot of neurons touching one another. Thousands of neurons can be touching a single one, making all these signals. So it can get it's very complicated how the brain works, and they haven't figured it all out yet. This is a nerve. These axons with their myelin sheaths come in bundles, you see. And so a single nerve is a huge bundle of lots of these axons. And you can see there's this big nerve. This is a nerve. This is like the nerves. You have a nerve running down your leg. Does anyone remember what it's called? The biggest nerve of the leg? It starts with an S. It's one of the ones y'all have been calling out to me. No? The sciatic nerve. That's the largest nerve that runs down the leg. And it's a bundle of lots of axons that are coming in from your toes and your muscles of your feet and your skin. And all these nerves are coming in, and they form this one, all these neurons are coming in, and they form this one nerve that is all of them bundled together. So it's kind of like a phone line. You know, if you cut a phone line, you can see there's a bunch of little wires inside of it. It's kind of the same way with a nerve. And so that explains what the funny bone is. You ever knock your funny bone? Right there, there's a nerve that runs from your hand, and all the nerves from your hand run down, and all come together and run through a nerve that goes right there on the tip of your elbow. And if you hit that just right, your hand will hurt, because it activates all the pain sensors from your hand. And your brain is thinking that something happened to your hand, but actually something happened to the nerve that's carrying all the neuron information from the hand. I know that's happened to you before, right? Don't you hate it? It's not funny, but they call it the funny bone. It's not a bone at all, it's a nerve. Huh? Ain't cool? And the axons are bundled in such a way that sensory neurons are in one bundle, and then motor neurons are in a different bundle. Remember, sensory neurons take information in toward the spinal cord, and motor neurons take information out, away from the spinal cord. So there's one of the bundles will be sensory, and another one of the bundles will be motor. Isn't that cool? Here it shows the knee-jerk reflex, and I did this last time. Let me do it one more time. I want you to try this. Why not try it right now? Can you sit on your desk? Move your desk in such a way that you can sit on it. Okay, you're not going to be able to sit on that one. You take an object. Could be the edge of a book. Could be your phone. Most of you have phones. And if you hit the tendon that's right here, if you hit it just right, you know, you gotta let your leg hang neutrally. Oh, that was a good one. Try it, McLean. What's that? Try it with one of your friends.
Where is it?
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah.
He's doing it a little. Oh, that's a good one. You got him.
I have a really good one.
That wasn't it, dude.
You got that something up there? All right, sit back down. Sit back down. It's fun, wasn't it? We have fun. The doctor has a nice little hammer that's the perfect shape for this.
They call me
Here's what you do. When you're tapping your leg like that, you hit the patellar ligament that joins the patella to the tibia. And when that ligament stretches, when you push on that ligament, it pulls the patella down a little bit. And that straightens this muscle out a little bit. Your quadriceps femoris muscle group, your quads. And there's a neuron in that muscle that just sits there all day and waits for that muscle to stretch. And when that muscle stretches, a signal gets relayed, it goes down, and here it shows it going off the table, but actually you don't have nerves hanging out of your body like that. So it actually goes up your leg and into your spinal cord. This shows the inside of your spinal cord. And so we're following the red process here. This is called the sensory neuron. And it goes into your spinal cord. And inside your spinal cord, it's synapses with another neuron. So the little neurotransmitters are released. And then they're absorbed. And the new signal gets sent out and down. And the new signal eventually reaches that same muscle and causes that muscle to contract. The muscle contracts and your leg kicks out. You probably noticed there's a small bit of time from when you hit your muscle, when you hit your ligament to when it kicked out. That's the reflex it takes. It goes whoop, whoop, kick. And that's enough time to save you if you take a misstep. Your leg will kick out for you and save you from falling. Isn't that nice? You didn't have that reflex, you'd be falling all over the place. So we call that a reflex arc. And it's the simplest form of behavior. Most lower animals, like insects and worms and things, operate almost completely on reflexes. They do no thinking. They're able to fly because reflexes allow their flying. Just like we're able to catch our fall because reflexes allow us to do that. But they don't think at all, you see. Or hardly any. But as organisms got more and more advanced, there was more thinking involved. There were more interneurons, where this thing goes to another few neurons before it comes out to the muscle. And if you have enough neurons in between, the signal can be processed and you can make decisions on whether this is the right thing to do. That's thinking. So we see as You can just look at different animals on the evolutionary family tree, and you can see this one's got no brain, this one's got a little bit of a brain, this one's got even more, this one's got even more, this one's got even more. And guess what? These came about first in the fossil record, these came about next, these came about next, these came about next. The brain got bigger over geologic time. Isn't that cool? Here's a reflex that involves what's called an interneuron. You step on a tack. Have you ever done that? And a signal goes up. It goes to your spinal cord. There's a little interneuron in between. And so this is a 3-neuron system. And it sends a message to your hamstring muscle, which when it contracts, you pick your leg up. And all that happens before your weight comes down to bear on the tack. And it keeps that tack from going too far into your skin. You pull your leg up. Isn't that cool? You ever think you're cool and you're walking along and you accidentally place your hand on the stove? And you go, whoa! And it almost comes up before you even feel the pain. And you're like, hey, that's hot. I'm not as cool as I thought I was. That ever happened to you? You can read about reflexes. That's 9.11. 9.12 talks about the meninges. The meninges are coverings of the central nervous system. Here's the brain. Here's the spinal cord. And the meninges have 3 layers. There's 3 layers of coverings of the brain and spinal cord. The outer layer is called dura mater. It's very tough and durable. We're going to do a brain dissection on Tuesday, and you'll see the dura mater there. It's hard. It's a tough covering. It's hard to break through. You're going to have to cut through it to get to the brain. The second layer is called arachnoid matter. It's real thin. It looks like spider web.
Is that why it's called arachnoid?
That's why it's called arachnoid matter. And the third layer is called pia matter. So it goes from outside to inside: dura mater, arachnoid matter, and pia matter. And circulating amongst the arachnoid matter here, in the what we call the subarachnoid space. Actually, the arachnoid matter here is purple. So the dura mater is blue, then arachnoid matter, and then this space has fluid in it called cerebrospinal fluid. And if you look, this blue fluid, it surrounds the entire brain. The entire brain has a thin layer of fluid around it. And so does the spinal cord, a thin layer of fluid. And it keeps your brain from touching your skull. A concussion is when your brain actually touches the skull. And you got to hit yourself in the head pretty hard to get that to happen. But when that happens, it usually damages some of the nerves, and you can have a concussion. That's what they talk about in the video. That's what happened to the guy.
Are we going to find out what happens today?
We're about to watch it in just a second.
I'm very concerned about Brian.
And then if you look at the brain itself, listen, the brain has gray matter on the outside and white matter on the inside. The gray matter of the brain are the cell bodies, and the white matter of the brain, that's the axons coming from those cell bodies that are covered in myelin, which is white. So the cell bodies of the brain are on the outside. And the brain's got all these convolutions, these curves and dents, and that gives more cell bodies, more surface area for cell bodies to exist.
So the more dents you have in your brain, the smarter you are?
Probably to some extent. All humans have the same amount, though, so that does, and we aren't all the same smart. So here's it shows around the spinal cord. There's the dura mater, There's the arachnoid matter. There's the subarachnoid space with the cerebrospinal fluid. And there's the pia mater. And there's the actual spinal cord. So there's a nice covering surrounding it. This cerebrospinal fluid is what they have to, it's what you sometimes get an infection in, and that's called meningitis. And to check to see if someone has meningitis, they do what's called a spinal tap. And they take a needle and they go in there and they stick it in and suck out some of that fluid. Supposedly very painful. Anyone here ever had one done? No? Here's kind of a look at the spinal cord from the sides. In some places the spinal cord is thick, and in other places it's thin. There's an enlargement at the bottom called the lumbar enlargement, and there's an enlargement around the neck called the cervical enlargement.
When they give an epidural, is it similar to spinal tap? Because don't they like do it in your back?
I'm not sure. Epi means above, and dural means the dura, which is the dura mater, the covering. So I think it's above the dura. I don't think it's down in it. But I don't know for sure. I'm just going by what the word says. If you cut the spinal cord, it looks like this. It looks like there's a butterfly in there, doesn't it? The butterfly is the gray matter. That's the cell bodies of the spinal cord. All the white area here, that's all wiring. That's all axons covered by myelin, and that's why it's white. You can almost see little lines going out of this thing. Those are axons coming out from these cell bodies. It's the cell bodies, if they're killed, they don't grow back. The axons that attach to them, sometimes they can grow a bit. So if you break the axons, you could possibly get some growth back and some repair. But if you kill the cell bodies, you're in real trouble. It depends how bad you break the axons to whether they'll grow back or not. But they do grow to some extent. And this shows that somebody touches your skin, a nerve comes in from your skin, there's a synapse in the spinal cord, it carries the information all the way up to the brain, through the medulla, the pons, the midbrain, all the way up here to the thalamus is what this area is called. And then there's another synapse that carries it to a cell here, and that cell somehow senses the touch. So we have 1, 2, 3 neurons to go through before we can sense somebody touching our skin. And once this cell senses it, then the signal can bounce around the brain, which is you deciding what to do with this thing that's suddenly touching your skin. And then you can send a new signal down to act on that. And so all that happens if, say, a fly lands on you. Signal goes to your brain says, oh, something's touching me. Maybe a signal bounces around your memory neurons a little bit, and somehow, yeah, I remember that happened before. That's a fly. And you need to swat that thing because you don't want flies on you. And so then the signal comes down to the muscles of this arm, maybe many signals, to swat the fly. You had to learn how to exactly swat something. It took you years of practice as a baby to learn hand-eye coordination and get the effect, swatting in the correct place. Now, since I have ninja training, I can actually capture it and let it go somewhere. But not everybody's trained as a ninja like me. Oh wait, I wasn't supposed to say anything about it. Huh. We study the brain then. You want to see what happened to, what's his name?
Yes.
Brian.
Brian?
The video? Do I record the video? Okay.
No, that makes sense. I'm just trying to figure out where